to fight Katie Taylor.
Hey, Eddie,
Can you clarify December 7th, the drug testing for Joshua-Ruiz too?
Yep, same as the first contract, full VADA testing. Every fight that Anthony Joshua has had since the, Gary Cornish fight, I think his 12th fight, full VADA testing, full camp, absolutely as per the contract for the fight, as per the first fight.
As far as you know, Ruiz is coming to the press every.
Yeah, we've got 2 weeks to go to the press conference. He sent some questions. We've been answering his questions. People are trying to cause trouble. You've got Bob Arum, who is so desperate for Andy Ruiz to end up in a court case with no money and to lose his IBF belt that he's apparently the Saudi Arabia, the US government say you mustn't go there. Absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Look into the facts. Bob Arum also says it's a war zone, apparently. Absolute rubbish. We were there 3 days ago. It is spectacular. It is ready for this event. So they had some questions which we're talking. There's a press conference in 2 weeks. Both fighters will be there and the fight will take place. Saudi Arabia.
Eddie, is there an update for October 12th, Usyk?
Yes, he's fighting in Chicago, Wintrust Arena. I saw a report from Boxing Scene who've got a lot of things wrong lately, but that's another story. About Fedosov, there's been no contract sent to Fedosov. He is in the running. What's debatable?
That we get a lot of things wrong.
I wasn't referring to you. It wasn't your articles, but you have got quite a few things wrong. Not you.
Is Carlos Takam
Carlos Takam is out of the fight. He's not taking the fight.
Eddie, Bob Arum said that you're announcing the fight without the fighters there. You allowed Andy Ruiz to grab you by the balls, so to speak.
Listen, we've got a contract. We followed the exact rules of the contract. We have a rematch clause at a venue to be decided by us. All we've got to do is let them know where that venue is. Bob Arum he's on another place. He's totally lost the plot. He hates Andy Ruiz so much. All he wants to do is let Andy Ruiz waste his career, lose his belts. That's the main thing. He's got Pulev. So if he don't take this fight, Pulev gets the belt. So what Bob Arum needs to do is concentrate on his own shows. His last 2 shows, one in LA and one in Philadelphia, sold a cumulative amount of tickets of about 800. In fact, next week I'm getting him right out of trouble, selling 18,000 people for Lomachenko Campbell in London. So Bob just needs to calm down and just I know he's trying to cause trouble for Andy Ruiz, but the fight's on, taking place. There's no, he's got him by the balls. We've got a contract. All we've got to do is tell him where it is. We've done that.
So
why Saudi Arabia? Because it was a neutral venue, and all these conversations were had with Ruiz's team. Well, we said to him, we want to do it in London. Look, he really don't want to do it in London. He's got a major problem. Okay, we'll do it in a neutral venue. What would you prefer, London or Saudi Arabia? Their response, Saudi Arabia. Gotcha. Right? Of course the money's good. Right? I'm not going to lie to you. But there is a chance, and I keep saying to people, there is a whole nother world out there for boxing. If the Middle East become invested in the sport of boxing, I promise you, unfortunately for you guys, you will not be seeing as many mega fights in this country or in the UK, because this country and the UK cannot match the potential investment for fights in the Middle East. That's just fact.
What about some of the backlash?
We understand it, and I understand not everyone's going to be happy. And people say, you're hiding behind the WWE, the World Boxing Super Series, Formula One, the European Tour, the Tennis Super Cup, the Italian Super. These are all major events by organisations that are much, much bigger than Matchroom, and much, much bigger than this fight. When George Groves boxed Callum Smith in the final of the World Boxing Super Series in Saudi Arabia, no one said one thing. Not one thing.
What do you think that is?
Well, it's me.
It's you, right?
Yeah, it's me. It's me, but it's more the profile of the fight, the size of the fight, and people want to criticise. There was no one really pushing that fight. So if I did that fight, I would have got a load of stick, but not as much stick as Joshua.
Possibility of Amir Khan on the undercard?
No, not for that fight.
What do you feel about Andy saying that he don't feel safe going over there?
Andy Ruiz will be the safest person on the planet. We've been out there. We've got everything completely under control. The government, Skills Challenge, they want to make this. The whole world will be watching this event.
What about the idea that Joshua is doing a heel turn? I don't know if you're familiar with that term, heel turn.
Yeah, on Lennox Lewis.
Not on Lennox Lewis, on Andy Ruiz, just in general, like his attitude. He's normally like a happy-go-lucky guy.
Do you know what? You can't win, right? Because over the years, he's tried to be the consummate professional, and he gets criticism. People saying to him, "You're a bit boring. You've got to speak up more. You let Eddie Hearn be your mouthpiece." So he gives an interview where he just gives his thoughts. Joshua, what's happened to him? He talks too much. He talks shit. So you can't really win. But I just think now Joshua is in a situation where the loss has kind of just brought him to the reality of the sport and the situation, which is anything can happen at any time. People will back you on the way up and kick you on the way down. So fuck everybody. Like that's what I think. It's almost like you want to criticise me. I'm going to tell you how I feel. That Lennox Lewis thing. Lennox Lewis has been having digs and criticisms at Anthony Joshua for years and years. It goes back to when he tried to sign him as a manager and Joshua turned him down. It has nothing to do with Lennox Lewis as a fighter. He's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But that's what his opinion of him as a person.
Can you expand more on the security measures that will be in place for you started and then you got interrupted?
Just like everything that's been requested by Team Ruiz has been delivered. So we know the security measures. It's not like, Bob Arum talks about in this country. It's just a procedure to make sure that everybody is ultra comfortable. Team Ruiz came back with their own questions and said, we would like this in place. We said, we will deliver that, absolutely. Whether that's to have an additional, your own people. You've got to understand, this is a sort of government, royal family affair where everything will be absolute perfection. And they will make sure, and we've seen in the build-up, we've seen with the agreements, we have everything in place to make sure this event is absolutely as safe as possible.
Eddie, December 7th, the critics have said that everything's on the line for AJ if he loses the fight. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think they're right. But I will say one thing. I mean, if you lose, you've had 24 fights or 25 fights and you've lost to one man and you're 29 and you've been the unified world heavyweight champion. So it's not the end of the world, but of course he just wants to win the fight, I mean, I watched that fight back so many times because in England you can't help, it's on every day, like people are still playing it, And I look back and I just think, this is a very dangerous fight, but I know this time around he's just focused on Andy Ruiz. In that first fight, people were talking about Joshua, Wilder, Fury. He says now, I weren't up for fighting Andy Ruiz. I didn't have anything or was Andy Ruiz just really good? Has he got his number? We'll find out on December 7th.
How come is that you say that he signed a contract and then Andy Ruiz says he never signed? You say it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. Andy Ruiz says he's not going.
And then he came back and said, look, I'm sorting everything out.
Right.
That's being sorted out. There's a press conference in 2 weeks. Both fighters will be there. Saudi Arabia, London, New York. He's quite right to ask certain questions. His team, they wouldn't be doing a job if they weren't. All those questions have been satisfied. You'll hear from Andy Ruiz in the next day or so about the fight. And he wanted it on neutral. He didn't want to come to the UK. So you can't moan about not coming to the UK. Then you get a neutral venue and moan about a neutral venue. He was given an opportunity from the gods. And he pulled off a victory from the gods, which he deserves. Be a man, honour the contract. That is what he will do. That is what his team will do. Tom Brown, Al Heyman, Louis DeCubas, all those people fully on board to deliver what they promised they'd deliver in writing, by law.
Does it go to litigation if it doesn't go to Saudi Arabia? If he doesn't?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but everybody knows that. I mean, that's a standard procedure. If you break a contract, then he'll lose. Once you're in a litigation process, you'll lose your belts.
If Ruiz loses, can we expect a third fight?
Yeah, I think if Andy Ruiz was to lose,
but there's no rematch.
No rematch clause. No.
Okay.
Why did you strike up this partnership with Gennady Golovkin? I mean, he came to you.
Basically what happened is I had a meeting with Gennady Golovkin a long time ago, probably 6 months ago, maybe longer, where I wanted to bring him to DAZN. I brought in John Skipper. And I said, look, you guys, you talk. I know Triple G, you've got your own promotional company. We'd love to work together. He did his first show. We stayed in touch the whole time. I helped out with this deal a lot. And he said, look, I'd like to work together, co-promoters, on my career. I think you can deliver a lot. I think you have a big stable of fighters, particularly in the middleweight and super middleweight divisions. And that's what we did, and that's what we delivered. For me, he's one of the biggest names in boxing. I think he's probably the most exciting fighter in world boxing still. And it's a massive signing for our stable, working together with him, helping him with his stable of fighters as well, not just to box on these shows, but on all of our matchroom shows.
I thought Tom Loeffler took care of that portion.
No, Tom Loeffler's still on the team, but I think Gennady wanted us to spearhead his promotional efforts. So it's an honour that he's decided to do that. Obviously, with our relationship with DAZN, we can keep it in-house. Hope to think that we can make the fights now like Demetrius Andrade, like maybe a Danny Jacobs rematch, like a Billy Joe Saunders fight, like a Callum Smith fight. There's so many great fights to be made. But obviously first is October 5th.
Did you think that it was getting difficult for him handling those promotional obligations?
No, I think any fighter should try and remove himself as much as possible from being involved with the promotion of a fight, because this is the toughest sport in the world inside the ring. Outside the ring, it's the worst business in the world. Worst business in the world. Sleepless nights, people trying to fuck you, right? Fights falling through, people running off, trying to break contracts, governing bodies making decisions that you can't even like. This is why we love it. Doesn't matter whether you're writers, you do what you guys do. We're all addicted to boxing. But if you're involved with the show, if you start making decisions about the ticket prices and the undercard and the press conference venues, you're mad. You've already got the toughest job in the world. Don't make it any harder. So I think he looked at that in that respect and said, Triple G Promotions is extremely important to me moving forward. We want to work with a partner who can push the shows, push the events, plan our strategy worldwide. This is beyond just boxing in America. You know, we have to look at Middle East, we have to look at Japan for the Murata fight, we have to look at maybe fighting in the UK again. So it's a global strategy rather than just...
The Murata fight,
that's a big fight. I mean, that's a big fight. Murata in Tokyo is a huge fight. I would love to put a fight like that. That's a groundbreaking fight.
If the
Hey,
Canelo
Eddie,
fight
Eddie.
falls through for Triple G, amongst your stable, who do you like to match Triple G?
I think Billy Joe Saunders is a great fight. I think Billy Joe Saunders is a fight that was close quite a few times. I think Callum Smith is, right now, without question, the number one 168 pounder in the world. Everyone's afraid to fight him. You know, he's a little bit unproven, other than the George Grove victory, but I think his size, the way that he's beaten people, every time we put him in the mix, whether it be Canelo, it's not even up for discussion.
Would Saunders fight him?
Fight Gennady?
No, Callum Smith.
Yes, he would. Yeah, and that's a fight that we may look at for spring of next year. Obviously, that's a fight quite easy to make. But the only one thing I'd say on that is I think they're both really good, and obviously they're both with me, and I would quite like to get them bigger fights before they meet to make it the size that it should be for the risk involved. That's not what fans want to hear, but that's the truth. You know, I really feel like that fight is a great fight, but there's other fights out there for both guys that could make that fight monumental rather than just a big domestic fight.
So Saunders is definitely going to stay at 68. That's what he's
At the moment, yeah, he's going to defend his belt in probably November. He'll have his date next week, and then he can move to 160. It's not a problem. But I feel with Billy, the longer he stays at 168, the more likely he is to stay there. It's very going to be difficult for him to drop those 8
Hey, Eddie, do you think that it's a possibility if Triple G is successful in this fight, that he could get a fight? We'll see a fight with him and Demetrius Andrade?
I think it's a great fight. Demetrius Andrade is a little bit in the same boat as Billy Joe Saunders. Really tricky, very good fighter, tough to beat. So those guys, like for me, Canelo should be fighting Demetrius Andrade. He shouldn't be fighting Kovalev. It's a good fight, but he should be fighting the other champion in the division. But you can't really criticise Canelo Alvarez because his resume is stellar, right? So it's tough to say, oh, you know, you're not fighting. He just boxed Danny Jacobs. He beat him. So, and he wants to fight Kovalev. Again, that's a tough fight. But for me, if you're not fighting Triple G, which is the fight he should have taken, then you should be fighting Demetrius Andrade.
Arum's saying, based on the comments that Gennady made on Canelo, testing positive for clenbuterol, that he should never give him the fight. What are your thoughts on that?
Bob Arum seems to be being very kind to Canelo,
Right.
which makes me smell a rat.
What's the incentive?
Don't know. You make your own mind up on that. Maybe there's a move coming from Bob Arum. Yeah, co-promote, I think. Yeah. He's been strangely nice to Canelo. So there's a plan behind Bob's madness on that one.
Is Canelo too big to sign? Like, could Bob turn around and sign?
Oh, I believe he's got a promotional deal with Golden Boy. But,
Doesn't seem like he's happy over there, right?
I said to Gennady this morning, having all the control is not always as easy as you think. Like we had it with Joshua. It's hard to get fights. People want to price themselves out. People want to block you. Mandatories are called in, and then before you know it, you're sort of, it's not easy. And I think Golden Boy wanted to make the Gennady Golovkin fight. I think they wanted to deliver that fight for the zone. But clearly Canelo said, no, not for me right now. I want to fight Kovalev. They missed the boat on the Kovalev fight. Now they've got to wait till Saturday. But if Kovalev loses, or Kovalev doesn't look good, or Kovalev gets injured, they go back to the marketplace where they've already upset a lot of people and say, all right, Demetrius, we'll fight you now. And turn around and say, well, not at the numbers we discussed before. You've already binned us off. Now let's talk properly. So,
do you think he'll eventually fight Gennady, and he's just delaying it for some reason, or do you think?
I think he'll fight him when he decides he wants to fight. I think that's more what it's about. It's about, you don't tell me who to fight, I'll tell you who I'll fight. You know? But the fact is the best fight in boxing that can be made right now is still Canelo against Triple G, in my opinion. If Gennady looks good on October 5th, the fans are going to want that fight. It's two great fights. The Zone are going to want that fight, and both fighters have an obligation to deliver subscribers for the Zone. That's the fight that does it. So from Gennady's, he's all in.
Hey Eddie, is this